Hello everybody, my name is Tyler Funk. This is for sports law class, EDU 503, William Woods University online for athletic administration is the major. This is my final video in this class, and I look forward to sharing with you guys the self-audit. This is the Title IX self-audit that is due this week. Just everything about Title IX, kind of how I did it with our school itself, and the self-audit portion of Title IX, and how it can apply to you as athletic administrators. Before we get started in the self-audit part of this assignment, I think it's important to revisit Title IX, what it is, what it means. Title IX obviously is a law, and it is defined as the following: no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participating in, denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal funding, federal financial assistance. So there you have it. Just any education program can't exclude people from participating because of their sex. You cannot deny them benefits or any discrimination. Now, there's a lot of vague words in there that can be interpreted many different ways. So when we go through this presentation, I'll kind of try to hit on some of those things that are more specific when it comes to whether you're complying with Title IX or you're not complying with Title IX. It's a very vague subject. So when you put standards or benchmarks to hit as a school or athletic administration, that helps you make sure you're in compliance with Title IX, which is always important. The way that this has to do with high school athletics is that people get to participate in the sports if they want to, if they're given an equal opportunity. Also equal opportunity in funding, ratio of how many people are at the school, how many girls sports there should be, all things we'll get into in a second. Like I said, all Title IX is just make sure that each program gets an equal opportunity, and Title IX is very important in the athletic field. It's not just limited to athletics, but that's where you see the most cases brought up. If you look and just research Title IX, that's going to be the thing that kind of pops up the most is, discrimination towards female athletes is probably number one, and then discrimination towards, different sexual orientations, sexes, bullying. All those will be found if you Google it on the internet. So it really is very important in athletics, especially high school and college athletics. And like I said, one common mistake that people make with Title IX is that they think it only applies to female athletes, and that's not the case. Yes, 80-90% of the time when you're talking about Title IX, you're talking about female rights and athletic and participation in athletics, but it doesn't have to be with that. It can be with other things too. Ethnicities, gender, sexual orientations, anything of that sort. As long as it falls under Title IX, it doesn't have to just be women. Now, when it comes to being an athletic department or school, they have to make sure they're complying with Title IX at all times. So the question that comes up a lot is, how does an athletic department or school, how are they supposed to know if they're compliant or not? Is there a random number? Is there a certain number? They say they have one girls athletic program. Is that enough? A lot of times people don't know, especially at smaller schools. So it's important to know how they are in compliance or how they're not in compliance. The first way is to be very knowledgeable about Title IX. Know what is allowed, what is not allowed, know what standards you have to meet, and just really, really focus on getting as much info as you can, and remember and retaining that information when it comes to Title IX. Another way that people use to see if they are in compliance with Title IX is called the three-prong test. And this is something I'll be talking about the rest of the time in very, very great detail, and it's very important for an athletic program to make sure they're compliant with one of the three of the prongs, not all three. It's a common mistake. Not all three prongs have to be made, just one of the prongs. So make sure if you're an athletic director or you're going to be, you have to meet one of these three prongs, and then you'll be in compliance with Title IX. Like I said, only one out of three must be met. Here are the three prongs and a quick review of each one. I'm not going to go into great depth on every single one because we were told to only choose one. So I will just give you a quick review of each. And then whenever we are done with that, I will talk more about the prong I chose and how it applies to Kearney High School here in Kearney, Missouri. Substantial proportionality, basically mean that this is the part of the three-prong test that basically means that the attendance at the school by percentage needs to be the same, needs to relate and contrast with the people that are participating in sports. For example, if the school is 50% boys and 50% girls, then when it comes to athletics, that should be substantially close to that number when they participate in sports. Now, there's the word that's kind of some vague area against substantially. It doesn't have to be exact. There's been cases that they were within 5% and that was accepted. And then there's been cases that there were 15% difference and that hasn't been accepted. So a good rule of thumb is to stay under 5%, and that should be accepted by Title IX compliance. Prong number 2, which is actually the one that I chose to do Kearney Athletics over. We'll get to that in a second. History and continued practice of women's athletic program expansion. Obviously, expansion means to grow. So the growing and continuing practice of women's athletics programs. Continue to grow them. Like I said, this part of the test is make sure that the school district or school is always trying to grow in the number of athletic programs and the number of athletic athletes in those programs. This is one where there needs to be more opportunity each year an athletic program is alive. So from 17 to 18, there needs to be more of an effort to show more and more athletic programs, upgrading them, whatever it takes to make them better. And that's one way. Prong number 3, full and effective accommodations of women's athletics interests and abilities. This is the third prong. I'm quoting from the source that we got. In effect, this requires offering every team for women for which there is 1, a demonstrated interest in the sport by the school's female enrollment, 2, significant ability among those interested in the field of variable team, and 3, an adequate number of competitors in the school's geographical area of competition. Okay, now to what I chose for my self-audit, and I chose to focus on prong number 2. It said choose one of the 3 prongs. I thought prong number 2 was one that could relate easily to Kearney High School and could be shown easily by our school or school district. And if you remember what I said earlier, prong number 2 is history and continued practice of women's athletic program expansion. In my opinion, I believe this is probably one of the easiest ones to show that you're in compliance with Title IX. Now, I do believe prong number 1, if you're a sheer numbers person, that could be one that can be easily shown. But this one is also very easy if you make sure you're doing the correct things. And like I said, the school I chose is Kearney High School. It's in Kearney, Missouri, just north of Kansas City, just north of Liberty. I thought that if I chose a school that I've been familiar with and have vast knowledge on it, it would be a lot easier to talk about and I'd know more about the school and what they're doing in the community to help expand women's athletics. Within this prong, there are a number of different ways to show that you, as a school, are continuing expansion. These are some of the ways that you can make sure that you expand as a program according to LTC 506 that we were given. A school's history and continuing practice of adding women's teams. Very simple, right? Continuing to add women's programs. Teams, more teams, giving equal opportunity to women, and trying to add coaches and teams to the athletic program to show that you are trying to, provide more opportunities for these women to participate in athletics. I have been in the school district for about 14 years. I've been around Kearney. Now, I haven't been teaching all that long, so I was in school, obviously, from 2nd grade here, and then I left for college for 4.5 years, and I came back to teach. This is my 3rd year teaching. In that time, though, from being a student to being a teacher, I've seen many programs added. For example, one would be women's golf. Women's golf wasn't offered here when I was here. Women's trap shooting, another one. Women's tennis. Those are all things that have been added since I've been becoming a teacher. The second part of this prong would be a school's history and continued practice of upgrading school club level teams and to varsity status. So basically trying to get these club teams to a varsity level where they compete with other schools, and that's something that Kearney has always tried to do. I think women's trap shooting started as a club, and now they have a chance to go compete against other schools, which is something that's really, really exciting for those girls. Number 3, a school's history of continued practice of affirmatively responding to requests for the addition or upgrading to women's teams. Okay, so this is one that I think as an athletic program you should apply to any teams, men's or women's. If a coach or someone shows interest or asks you to upgrade in certain things as that athletic department, you should definitely take that into consideration. Doesn't mean you're going to always meet them, but it does mean that you should take them into consideration. And when you're looking at these prongs, you need to show that you are giving those upgrades to not just the main boys sports. You need to give upgrades to the girls sports as well. I happen to be really close with the men's golf coach here, and when I was here there was only men's golf, and I know I was talking to him, he said a lot of girls that would love to beat golf, but we just don't have it right now. And he said he thought about bringing that to the athletic administration. He did, and a couple of years later they got a girls team. Also just the upgrading of fields. Our softball field was in very, very poor condition. Now it's one of the best softball fields in the area. So that's one thing that you can always show, improve the facilities and the sports itself. And number 4, a school's history of continued practice of monitoring and developing interests of women by conducting surveys or reviewing other indices such as growth of club sports, community sports, and local and state sports women's trends. This is one that I see is probably the most weak area of Kearney. I think we do have good club teams around here. I don't think we do a good job promoting them. I think Kearney does a good job of polling and surveying their coaches about what's needed or to improve Kearney athletics, but I don't think they serve or poll the community as well or the student athletes. So that's something that I would like to see change as I go forward in my career here. When it comes to this prong, I think one thing to really take into fact is what have you done lately. That's one of the things we always say as coach, what have you done lately? It doesn't matter what you did 10 years ago. Yes, it matters, but to prove that you're in compliance with Title IX, you need to make sure that you're doing these things regularly, year to year, once every 5 years, once every 2 years. If you always are going off of something you did 10 years ago, you might not be in compliance with Title IX, and that's something that you want to make sure you're in compliance with. You don't want to throw all your money and your facilities into the boys football program and then turn around and never do anything for the girls volleyball program forever. And they're still working with the same equipment, same facilities. They're getting booted off of practice facilities. That's just something you don't want to do. One question with this prong is how much can you really grow a girls' side of a program? It comes down to a sheer numbers thing. If there's not enough girls to keep adding teams, then you don't want to add teams that you don't have girls for. Does that make sense? So you don't really want to keep adding teams without people to participate in them. You can keep adding to facilities, obviously, and stay up to date with latest technology, but you might run out of just sheer numbers to add teams. So that's if you do, you look to the other 2 prongs to make sure you're in compliance with Title IX, because you might not have all the numbers. So in a brief summary, like I said, I chose Kearney. We did the prong number 2, and this is for EDU 503, and this was our final project. I just think it's very important. It's something that I didn't really learn coming out of college that well. My professors didn't do a very good job teaching me about Title IX. Yes, it was mentioned, but the prongs is something I never heard of. Being in compliance, doing the right things to make sure you're in compliance is something that I've never really heard of. So, it's good to get a reminder on these things, especially when I want to become, an athletic director someday. You got to know what you can and what you can't do, what you need to be aware of at all times, and just, I think, like I said before, having knowledge in this area is one of the biggest things. Having knowledge of the prongs, knowing what you should meet, knowing what coaches to hire, how many students you have at your school, how many students are participating, something that those numbers you should always be aware of. Yes, you might have some people to do that for you, secretaries to keep those numbers, but as an athletic director, you're the one that's ultimately in charge, and you're reporting to the school board or the superintendent. So you're the one that's going to be on the line if you're not Title IX compliant, and that's the last thing you want to do is have to do with a lawsuit in those areas. So Title IX, self-audit, very important. Tyler Funk, EDU 503. Thank you very much.